Very interesting story. And interestingly, the Hortus Malabaricus has recently been scanned, and you can find the entire version online. It's a huge book, and you can see the scan of the 17th century book in very high resolution. You can go every page, look at every illustration. You can find the link to it on the article in Wikipedia on Hortus Malabaricus. Okay. Come 200 years later, and we had a person named Alan Octavian Hume. Anybody heard of him? You probably heard of him for the Congress Party. But this guy was hardly into politics for the first 30 years of his life. The moment he came into India, he started collecting birds. He started collecting. In the early days, in order to identify a bird, you didn't have binoculars. So you take a gun, you shoot it, and then you skin it, and then you describe it to somebody, and then they say, if it's got black wings and brown tail, and it's got this length of leg and wing, this is the bird. And oftentimes, when he shot a bird, it wasn't even there in the books, because the Indian birds, many of them had not even been described. So he figured out that he was completely lost. So he started collecting birds, writing down the descriptions, giving them the names, and he started a journal, the first ornithology journal of India. And he developed a wide network of observers. So there were military officers, civil servants distributed all across India, and he would tell them, get me any bird, tell me about what you saw, and they would send him specimens. You can imagine how it would have been in the 1800s, sending it by post, and he lived in Shimla, and he had a magnificent collection of something like 80,000 specimens at the end of it, and he wanted to write a book about the birds of India. It was supposed to be the magnum opus, and he had manuscripts that he had written down for 30 years. Unfortunately, he was on holiday at some point of time, and a servant took all the paper and sold it off as waste paper. So broken-hearted, Hume decided that he would no longer study birds. He gave away his collection to the British Museum, and it's still there. And even today, if somebody wants to know about certain details of birds, the place to go is to go to the British Museum of Natural History. That's where you will learn. You will not even find much in the Bombay Natural History Society or the Zoological Survey of India. So here's how things were working. Now there's also this thing about natural history. Somewhere in the 1800s, there was a large-scale interest in UK. So there was an interest in objects of natural history. So initially it was called natural theology. So people would go and collect birds, collect shells, collect insects, colorful insects, and then they would keep it in the hall in a big glass case. And every gentleman of upper class would have invariably in their house a large collection of this. So what it showed to the public was, it shows that you admire the Creator and His creations. So this was called natural theology. Things changed after a certain Mr. Darwin arrived. So it changed from natural theology to natural history. And still, the whole idea of collecting new species went on in Europe, and species that were found in India invariably went to Europe. Because you had these large collections in Europe, people could say whether this species is new, is it something related to this, and they would give it the appropriate name. And so Indian biodiversity was never actually documented very well locally. It was collected locally, but the information about it was actually best documented elsewhere. And there were lots of works. As I said, there was so much interest that Charles Darwin, Hooker and others, they went to the Queen and said, we need to have a work on the fauna of all the Commonwealth countries, especially India. So they started work on things like, there was Lepidoptera indica, there's fauna of British India, which is a huge volume of works. Things were being done on a large scale. Now there's something that should be said over here. Lepidoptera indica was started by a man named Frederick Moore. He worked for 30 years, and before he could complete his work, he died. Okay. The fauna of British India, there were lots of things planned, lots of things didn't happen, authors died, And once India got independence, the project was terminated. And so the essential fact is, it takes such a long time to document these things. Okay? So the people in those times had to use, there was no photography, so the only way you could get color illustrations were things like this. This is from Lepidoptera indica. These are actually not too uncommon butterflies not far from here. You may not have, these are paintings, yeah. It's a method of painting called a chromolithograph. I could talk about it, but you can check it up on Wikipedia. This is an extremely complex work involving carving limestone and putting paints onto it, pressing paper, very expensive and requires extremely great skill. So these are absolutely brilliant, and 200 years later they still shine. So all these pictures are there on Wikimedia Commons, by the way. You can find it under the category Lepidoptera indica. There's something like 2,000 such pictures. So I'll talk a little more about birds, because I've been interested in birds for the last, maybe since I was a kid. The only thing was, when I started, I couldn't afford to find out more. There were a few books, and lots of books were extremely expensive. And even today, the book that you see over there is a 2-volume work. It was published last year, 2005, printed in the US, based on specimens from the Smithsonian Museum. And essentially these books are targeted at Western audiences who are coming to look at birds on a short-term visit. They come to India for bird watching, so that's the target. So it tells you how to identify the bird. It doesn't tell you what that bird does, how does it live, what does it feed on, how does it nest. So there have been earlier works on that kind, and on your right you can see that's the edge of the book. That's a 10-volume series by none other than Salim Ali, who was a Bombay man who lived not far from here. And he spent his entire lifetime working on this book. And even that book is not complete. So what I'm saying is, there's no book that's complete. It's beyond any person's lifetime to make the full book. And the way species are described, it's ad hoc. It's not like you'll find every species in one trip. So this is the kind of thing that Wikipedia is so well made for. So, and the cost of books is so great, and books quickly get outdated. And even the Indian government has been trying to document biodiversity. There's a Biodiversity Act, there's a National Biodiversity Authority, there's several organizations under the Ministry of Environment and Forests, but they're not really citizen focused. Okay, I just visited the MOEF website the other day, and I just wanted to see what is it that I as a citizen can find out on the ministry's website. I see where the minister has been, I see that there's an address, there's an award over there, and there's a bunch of photographs. What do I know about forests? Or is there a place where I can ask these people? No. Then I look at the Zoological Survey of India, which is, I look at the website and yes, I'm lost. There's absolutely nothing I can do. Okay, so one of my friends decided to actually test how the Zoological Survey of India is in terms of being focused to citizens. There's actually a Wikipedia editor named Prashant, who is a doctor who's in Antwerp. So he decided to write an RTI application to the ZSI. And he wrote, "Can you please give me a list of all the bird specimens that you have in your collection?" And after 2 months or so, there was a standard boilerplate reply, which says, "To Shri Parashnath NS," that's not his spelling, okay. And it says, "With reference to your application dated blah blah blah, I am directed to inform you that the Zoological Survey of India has 41,291 bird specimens at headquarters, Kolkata. Some of the registers are very old and fragile. Details of each specimen as per your queries are available in the said registers. You are most welcome to study the registers and specimens with prior intimation to this office." So that's the use of Right to Information Act. Do you think someone can go to Calcutta to find out something? I mean, it's out of the Okay. So this is why I think Wikipedia offers something. Okay. It's open to all. It's most important, open to progress, and it's for the long term. And why long term is important, I have told you. Nobody ever managed to write the full book in their lifetimes. Okay. And the environment is actually common heritage. If I took a photograph of an ant, I see very little reason why I should copyright it. It's that ant belongs to humanity, to the world. It doesn't belong to humanity. It's there, you know. Okay, and one of the things about it is Wikipedia also follows what is called the conservation philosophy. So one of the fathers of conservation is a man named Aldo Leopold, and when he was talking about conserving forests, he made a statement. He said, "To keep every cog and wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering." Okay, and as Wikipedia editors, most of us are tinkering with the entries. And the fact that Wikipedia keeps a history is exactly that. You keep every cog and wheel, and you can always rework things. And so it's very surprising that biologists have actually not used Wikipedia much. And it's only recently that biologists are saying, yes, we should use Wikipedia and we should use it as a way for advancing science. So this year there was an article in the IBIS, which is one of the world's leading ornithology journals. And there's a little opinion piece which says, why ornithologists should embrace and contribute to Wikipedia. There was another article recently by a professor, Roderick Page, who wrote about Wikipedia as an encyclopedia of life. And it's interesting that there's another project called the Encyclopedia of Life, where there's a plan to have one page for every species. And what Professor Page was saying was Wikipedia is actually competing with that highly funded project with absolutely no funds. Okay. Large animals, mammals, birds. It comes out to about 150,000 articles. A lot of those articles are actually already on Wikipedia. A lot of them are stubs. There was a bot called PaulBot, which many years ago decided to look at the IUCN red data list, and it created all these stubby articles about every species for which there's an entry on the IUCN database. So a lot of them are languishing for a long time with no development. And so when some of us bump into these creatures, we go and improve those articles. You can also start off with Fauna of India, the article, and then under that there are lists of various taxa, and then you can go per species. Okay, so one of the best ways in which I have found it useful to look at contributing to Wikipedia is when I'm walking around, look around myself, and I see, for instance, I picked up this leaf this morning and I've been hanging out with it. So this tree, it's a very large leaf. There's a big tree in front of the main convocation hall. I'd encourage you to see the real leaf. The green leaves are high above and I couldn't get it. But it's a very interesting tree. But how do you know about it? First of all, our education system is so good that we don't even want to ask what tree it is. Okay, so by the time we have grown up, they say, oh, don't touch that, don't look at that, don't care about it. So here's a plant, you can go and see it. It's actually a breadfruit. Okay, it's a relative of the jackfruit. Sorry? Okay, could be. So I would encourage you to go and look up breadfruit on Wikipedia. You might find a lot of historic information. There was actually not Captain Cook, but Captain S.S. Bligh, who on the mutiny on the HMS Bounty. Yes, so you see all these historic associations, and you will find them on Wikipedia. So there's so much of a story in that tree, and yet you miss out on all of it. There's this little sphere. Anybody wants to guess what it is? There's a little tree over here. It's called a cannonball tree. You'll find that it's also called Nagalinga in certain languages because the flower looks like a Curupita guyanensis. Yeah. So suppose I, as a naive person, bumped into these things. How do I find out about them? If I know the name, I can look it up. How do I find out what it is if I didn't know anything? So it turns out that you can actually do that on Wikipedia. There are various projects called Wiki Project Plants, Wiki Project Birds, Wiki Project Animals. So if you can take a photograph of this and upload it on the project, you can actually ask botanists around the world, can you please tell me what this is? And you will get a response, believe me. Yes. And sometimes a botanist would like to know where you saw it, so they need to know in which country it is, so they kind of know roughly what group it is. And you can't just use that seed. Typically you would like the whole tree, you like a part of the flower. So if you give them 4 photographs, you will be surprised by the kind of knowledge that exists on Wikipedia. There's also something called reference desk on Wikipedia. There was no mention about this in any of the other talks. So there's actually a reference desk where you can ask any question. And I'd encourage you to go and look at the reference desk, especially for mathematics. If you go and see the questions that are being asked in mathematics on that reference desk, you will be surprised. Because the kind of questions that people are asking and the kind of questions that they are answering is way beyond the average mathematical level that people are doing even in graduate school. And that's what I want to say is the kind of discussion that's happening on Wikipedia, other than encyclopedic article building, is also enormous, and a lot of people don't really know about it. So there's also a Wikipedia reference desk where you can go and ask for journal articles. You can go to the Wikipedia and look for the reference desk. Okay. So I want to show you a little cockroach that I saw recently. That's black with white spots. I didn't know what it was. Fortunately, I knew an entomologist, and he identified it as Therea petiveriana. It's very common in Tamil Nadu, Pondicherry, Chennai, and those places. And so what did I do? I took that photograph, uploaded it. I did a little research. I found out a bit about it, and there was an article. Now, agreed, tomorrow you may not be able to identify the article, you may not be able to find that article from the picture of a cockroach. But I'm sure there will be systems that will develop for visual searching. Google does have image search, but I'm not sure.
Using a file you can search. Using a local file image system.
Yeah.
APS.
Reverse image search is also there.
Yeah.
Reverse image search is also there.
Yeah, please try it out.
Yeah, it will not reverse.
Yeah, please.
But it works for me actually. It works for me.
Uploading a photo, even if they don't know, try to get at least a binomial, taxonomic common name, and do some extra site, extra Wikipedia site somewhere else, try to find some common names. For example, what I do for this non-lingual is, I get a photo, I suspect it is non-lingual, I go with that and then do a Google search, write in non-lingual, Malayalam, and the subject. And then there are numerous sites where actually the name comes from other languages.
Perfectly right. So it works for certain things where there is traditional knowledge and you find the mapping.
But by surprising when you get it from a plane.
Absolutely right.
There is another place with flowers of India to go.
Absolutely, there are lots of sites.
Numerous sites.
Absolutely.
The United States has a big database of common taxonomy, which you can, in fact, you can develop here there, upload and download that taxonomy databases.
Absolutely. So there are these options.
I'll request them to no more questions because the speaker is already overshot his time.